Okay, good morning to everyone. The November 17, 2023 meeting of the Volusia Forever Advisory Committee is now called to order. Would like to welcome everyone that is here in chambers with us and ask you to please, if you would, silence your cell phones so that we can concentrate on the person who is speaking. And for those of you who are listening online, welcome to you as well. We are ready for the roll call, please.
Wanda Van Dam. Jessica Gow. Steve Crump.
Here.
John Gamble.
Here.
Derek LaMontagne.
Here.
John Macaluso. Here. Suzanne Schreiber. Here. David Sosa.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, very good. First up is public participation. If there is anyone here that would like to speak today, if you could please fill out one of the forms in the back of the room and get it over to the ladies on our far left here. We will call you up to speak. If you would prefer to speak when the property that you are interested in is being discussed, when we call your name, just let us know that you would prefer to wait and we will call you then. Right now, we have just one request to speak, and that is from Miss Nancy Weary.
Hi, I'm Nancy Weary. I've been before the committee several times now. I've been working on a project in Lake Helen. Just wanted to come today to let you know we haven't gone away. We're still here, and we are still working on it, and we should be back before you complete project ready in January, your January 12th meeting, and we will see you then. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak now? Okay. Then we move on to the approval of the September 8 minutes. And just a reminder that this approval is to compare the minutes to what actually took place in the meeting. If there are things that you feel should have been discussed that weren't, or if you have questions, please save those for the committee comments at the end. So looking at the minutes as they reflect the meeting, did anyone have any corrections or changes?
I have one change to the minutes. Page 8, I was listed as making the motion, and I did not.
I believe Mr. Crump made that motion, if I remember correctly.
Yes. Yes, I believe I did.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I had just one brief thing on that same page, right under revised meeting structure. I was wondering if we could perhaps explain the new procedure just a little better so that it doesn't sound like we are doing the eligibility and the ranking of the same properties in the same meeting. If we could perhaps put the eligibility of the new properties and the ranking of previously approved properties taking place on the same meeting, just as a clarification. That was the only thing I had. Did staff have anything? No?
No, ma'am.
Okay, very good.
Move to accept the minutes
We need
as
a-
amended.
Second. Okay, I have a motion by Mr. Gamble and a second by Ms. Gow for approval of the minutes as amended. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Okay, now we move on to item 4, and that is staff comments.
Good morning, Tim Telfer, Land Acquisition Manager. To start staff comments, this is a pretty good segue right here. Actually, if we can go back to that previous screen. This is our revised meeting structure, as we just referenced in the minutes, and just for an explanation as to why we need to have this split structure here, we're required by resolution to provide a notice to the property owner regarding the VFAC, the Advisory Committee's determination of eligibility. So after you make a determination, we have to notify the property owner before you can begin that ranking process. So that's why we have to have that gap in time between these meetings. We are underway now in this revised meeting structure, although everything you review today is going to be on the eligibility side. We don't have any rankings for today. When we hit January, anything that you determine is eligible today will then be ranked and sorted, as well as any new applications will be presented for eligibility at that time. Go forward one more. Okay, so we've moved staff comments a little bit ahead in our normal meeting structure. We're going to segue out of staff comments into an introduction to Alachua Conservation Trust staff, our relationship on the RCPP project, and they have a presentation to walk you through and give you some background information on the RCPP. But I'm going to take a couple of minutes here and just provide some updates to the committee. Normally I do these at the back end of the meeting, but I'm going to fit them in a little bit earlier right now. So we've handled a number of forest and farmlands projects here. And so we've had 5 of those that are currently on your A list have been submitted to the Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services Rural and Family Lands Protection Program. Now there's 6 total applications that were from Volusia County. So 5 are from your A list. And then we have the 6th, which is one of those items that you're going to be considering today. The Double Eagle project was also submitted directly to DACS for the Rural and Family Lands funding. On the 8th of November, Nick and I went to Kissimmee and we basically represented the Volusia Forever program to the DACS review committee. Much like yourselves, they've established a review committee to handle all the applications that are coming through. They've got to sort them and prioritize their limited dollars towards which applications they're going to spend money on. So we went over there and encouraged them to, take a close look at the projects that have moved through the Volusia Forever program already. Let them know that we are set up and established as both a potential funding partner, as well as we have a great deal of experience in administering easements, and that includes after closing. You're still handling these easements in perpetuity, which requires inspections, and sometimes you have to deal with violations, etc. Another project update for you. If you recall the Sternstein project, this was a 70-acre parcel in the Oak Hill area, and it was a 3-way partnership between Oak Hill, Volusia County, and the St. Johns River Water Management District. All parties have now executed the purchase and sale contract. We're simply in the final due diligence stages right now, which is a phase 1 environmental assessment and a boundary survey, and then we'll move towards closing. We're also underway on the Stewart properties, and this is one where I want to emphasize that we work in close concert with other funding organizations. So here it is the Florida Forever program. Florida Forever staff, actually, let me just kind of reorient you. There were basically 3 ownership configurations out there. There was a 2,000-acre piece in the Port Arthur area called the Stuart Howarth parcel, and then we had 2 others around it, which were the Central Florida Investments and the Stewart family properties. So that large 2,000-acre piece is one that the state of Florida, Florida Forever program is currently in negotiations with the landowners on. We understand that they've actually reached a verbal agreement on price. We are now in the process of essentially catching up with them. We are underway on appraisals on those surrounding parcels here, and the concept is we are all going to aim towards the same closing date and try to close all those properties at the same time. Nick and I will also be traveling to Tallahassee on December 6th. If you remember the Lake Harney property that you handled recently, that was 5,500 acres on Lake Harney, southern Volusia County. We've submitted that to the Florida Forever program with the consent of the landowner. They understand the timelines involved. But it's been submitted to the Florida Forever program, and Nick and I will do the first presentation in front of their Acquisition and Restoration Council on December 6th. And the final update I have for you regards the county council. On October 17th, the council moved both that Lake Harney property that I referenced before, as well as the Lake George Inn holdings onto the A list. So we are now underway working on both those projects. We are in the early stages on Lake George Inn holdings and getting a little bit of title work before we start any appraisal there to understand what we may be dealing with on those Inn holdings parcels. So any questions on those matters before we transition? No questions? Okay, so the next item would be the a presentation from Alachua Conservation Trust.
And if I could ask Mr. Burbog if he would give us just a little bit of background on this and explain why this is important to our program, I would appreciate it.
Sure. We had discussed with the committee before that we were partnering with Alachua Conservation Trust, which is a leader in one of the leaders in conservation in Florida for the past 35 years. And we found a partnership in them where we could access some USDA funds as part of a regional conservation partnership program. What this RCP program is essentially the USDA saying, they're making a co-investment in successful conservation programs like Volusia Forever is the best way that I could describe it. We were successful with Dr. Carr's leadership and Tom Kay's leadership and George Johnson, who was our district conservationist for a very long time with USDA. He's on board with ACT now. So we were, and I believe Tim has shared with the committee, successful. Our Volusia County Council committed $20 million as match, which is a significant amount of Volusia Forever funds. And what that did is we were awarded the $25 million from the USDA for the Regional Conservation Partnership Program. And what that does is it gives us about $17 million in match for conservation easements within our county. This is the Lake to Lagoon project. Again, we're referencing from Lake George to the Mosquito Lagoon. I think the News Journal did a good job of picking up the article as well as multiple others, but we're really pleased with this partnership. And I think for me, when we go to USDA for their easement program, we're competing on a property by property basis. And we thought we had a really good property that didn't rank last time. So this eliminates some of that competition and gives us our own pool to go after properties that are on our A list. So I think it's basically leveraging local tax dollars and pulling down federal dollars to help us, as we've said in the past, with partnership dollars. Volusia Forever in the first iteration and second iteration, about 35% of what was spent was in partner dollars, so this helps us keep that trend alive. I want to thank Tim for his leadership too, because I was a bit skeptical at first, but he continued to hammer me, and we stayed the course, and so I appreciate that, and his hard work with Susan Carr, who's going to present today. So with that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Susan Carr from Alachua Conservation Trust, and then turn it over to Tim if he wants to say anything before she starts.
Yes.
I do just want to say a couple words here to the committee, and in that regards, the quality of our partner on this RCPP project. Alachua Conservation Trust is a major conservation organization in the state of Florida. They have, while they're called Alachua Conservation Trust, they have projects all the way from Georgia through South Florida. The organization itself has handled 3 RCPPs already, and Susan has been directly involved in them, and she had a 4th in her prior employment. So we have made clear to them that Susan is very valuable to the Volusia Forever program, and she is going to be engaged throughout this process as we work to begin some critical steps that are coming up with the NRCS folks. So with that introduction, please accept the presentation from Dr. Susan Carr.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you. Thank you. Little, how does one advance? Just hit that button there. Sorry, I need a little tutorial.
We've got a remote here if you want to
Oh,
use
remote.
that too.
Okay, great. Okay, thanks. Okay. Yes, my name is Susan Carr. I am with the Alachua Conservation Trust, and it was a great introduction that you just received there. Yes, despite our name, we have a 16 and now more like 17 or 18 county working area, since we're definitely working in Volusia County now. So as you can imagine, we started in Alachua County, but we have grown quite a bit in the last 30 years. I'm also here with George Johnson. This is a brilliant move we did. He's retired from NRCS. He was your district conservationist for a couple decades or a long time. And then he retired, and now he works for us. So, and that's a huge asset. So, yes, okay. Well, Brad already really kind of touched on this, but I just wanted to kind of fill in a little bit what he was saying. The Regional Conservation Partnership Program, RCPP, probably going to say that about 10,000 times, is a partnership program. It's not a grant. So I know the headlines all say, $25 million grant, so forth, and that's great, but it's not a grant. It's a partnership program. So it does a lot of things. It really sets up little funding pools for various things that I'll kind of go through briefly. It also brings money to run a program. So it's like starting a whole program. It brings funding to supplement that program. And in this case, definitely brings funding to supplement Volusia Forever. And that is the heart of our program here, our proposal, and now actuation of this. So the RCPP itself is a Farm Bill program. So it's part of the Farm Bill through the NRCS, Natural Resources Conservation Service. They're the people who implement the Farm Bill. And it is centered at the heart of it on NRCS identified resource concerns. And I've listed some here. There's quite a number of them, but ours are typically around, wildlife habitat, source water protection, and now weather resiliency. That's a big thing. And I also want to point out before I get too far into this, the $25 million award that we received came from the Inflation Reduction Act. So that's the source of our funding. Actually, it's through a Farm Bill program, but the source is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is itself a climate bill. So it does have a climate focus. Okay. Well, kind of going back in history a little bit, these are the existing RCPPs, at least the geography of the existing RCPPs. So you see it's something that's really catching hold, especially in North and Central Florida. The O2O, I guess you've heard about the O2O, part of the wildlife corridor, has 2 of them, actually. Lead partner there is North Florida Land Trust, NFLT. ACT has the 2 to the west. Is there a thing here? Oh, okay. Yeah, that's okay.
You can circle it on, I think this isn't annotated, you can circle it on your screen.
Oh, okay, that's okay. I can just, we are currently implementing the Surface to Springs and the Forest to Gulf RCPPs. You can see where those are. The Forest to Gulf is about a year old. Surface to Springs, I think, is about 2 years into a 5-year duration. And then there's one over the Tall Timbers Land Conservancy is the lead partner of the Red Hills area over near Tallahassee. Okay, so you see how this is, so to kind of reiterate, the RCPP does allow these partners, a lead partner, and then usually a whole slew of contributing partners, and Volusia County is the major contributing partner, to deliver conservation programs in a specific region for a specific purpose. Okay. All right, so fast forward to just a couple weeks ago, and 2 more were awarded. And so, of course, Lake to Lagoon, our favorite one here. I just want to point out there's another one just to the north, again through North Florida Land Trust as the lead partner, called the Corridor to Coast. You notice there's a certain convention here, how we name all these things. So one day we're going to have to break convention and just name it something else. But anyhow, so that's the kind of configuration of how they look today. Okay. Well, zooming in on the geography for Lake to Lagoon, as Brad mentioned, the lake is Lake George to Mosquito Lagoon. I think Brad came up with this name a while back to describe this region. And it includes all of Volusia County, parts of western Lake County, and a little bit of southern Flagler County. And the green is existing conservation lands and easements. So anytime you have any questions, just let me know. Okay. Well, there are many goals to this, but as Brad, I think our main goal here is more funding and resources for conservation easements, okay, to supplement Volusia Forever and other partners, state agency partners who are also part of this. So Florida Forever, Florida DEP is one, and the St. John's River Water Management District. Okay, so leveraging federal funding to supplement existing programs for Volusia Forever to, provide more dollars for conservation. And it is just conservation easements, not fee properties. Okay. Secondly, really it brings in money for land management contracts, cost share programs directly between NRCS and private landowners. So I don't know if you guys have heard of EQIP, the Environmental Qualities Incentive Program. George used to run for the NRCS. This is a very much an EQIP style program, but now it is a separate program just for the Lake to Lagoon. So we are now responsible for implementing that program. And I think George will be working on that. So it's kind of cool. So it's we're starting a new program. We'll be working with Volusia County on that as well. And then the third thing is to, of course, synergize all of these conservations at once. But this partnership program also comes with a lot of obligations to assess and quantify and report regional outcomes back to our resource concerns. How are we helping with wildlife habitat or climate or weather resiliency and things like that? That we still have to design a lot. We're just getting started on that. And then also in that category is expanded outreach and education. Not just about this program, but about the whole thing, the resource concerns, other contributing partners, even Florida Forever, rural and family lands, right? This is really going to help us springboard that outreach and education program for the Lake to Lagoon. And you see I put there, so Stetson University is a partner, the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. These are where some of these other partners really kind of come into play. And NGOs is non-government organization. I just use that as a general for all the nonprofits on the list. Okay, so this is very a schematic of how these partnership programs are sort of designed. I've really kind of discussed this, but in general, it seems like it works well if you have a lead partner that is a land trust or an NGO or something like that, and then you have your other NGOs that bring in. I've tried to vary. You can bring in funding, cash, or technical assistance using their jargon, so tools, expertise, in-kind contributions. So in general, not surprisingly, the NGOs bring a lot of the technical know-how and the legwork and that sort of thing. NRCS delivers mostly cash, of course, big bucket there, and then the state programs and local government, such as Volusia County, mixture of both. That's, in my experience, seems to be how it works. Okay, so specific to the Lake to Lagoon, this is the structure of our partnership design or what we now need to implement. Remember, we just got the award a couple weeks ago, or notice of the award, but we have quite a lot of work to be done. So this is just a sneak preview and a lot of paperwork. There is a lot of paperwork coming up, and agreements to be made and so forth. So, but at the heart of it is ACT and USDA enter into a giant agreement for 5 years. It's called the Programmatic Partnership Agreement. It's 5 year. It's like a giant MOU that's kind of an umbrella, and under that are a lot of contracts and agreements that that govern the funding and flow and stuff like that. So ACT is the lead partner. Volusia Forever is the primary contributing partner, by far coming in with the most contribution in the form of the $20 million commitment for, spending. And then you can see all the others, I think all in there, about 12 of them. So state, even another federal agency, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, FWC, Water Management District, and then Stetson University. Well, I've already mentioned some of these. And then at the end, sort of some nonprofit NGOs and advocacy groups. So, and that's collectively, see that big 25 million in the green at the top? What we did a lot this last summer is to gather up contributions from all of these partners in the form of cash commitments, in-kind commitments, all sorts of things. Get all that obligated, quantified, and it sums up to about 25 million. So when the proposal went to NRCS, it was basically a one-to-one match. And I think that was a very powerful thing in this proposal. I think this is why it was a winning proposal, because, and thank you, because the big contributor was Volusia County, of course. Okay. All right, so what comes out, this is what we have to do. Brad mentioned sort of the separate buckets of funding. This is more or less how it shakes out, although we have about 4 to 6 months of negotiation with NRCS ahead of us. But at least at the start, I mean, we literally sort of negotiate how all this is apportioned now. But to start, this is a starting point. So about 21 million will go toward conservation easements. And that's the bucket that will supplement existing programs through Volusia Forever, called entity programs in their lingo. And that money will supplement conservation easements in the Lake to Lagoon. Does that make sense? So that's your, and I could go on and on about how that happens, but, just big picture. About $1 million so far that we've appropriated for land management. That will go to contracts with individual landowners in the Lake to Lagoon to institute land management practices to benefit wildlife habitat or weather resiliency or flood mitigation, all kinds of things. And those contracts will be between the NRCS and the landowner directly. But we're a great big facilitator, so we facilitate that. So that's what that 1 million is. And then about $2 million to run the program, ... There's a whole slew of stuff there, which, and that gets into the outreach, education, outcomes assessment, and it's really going to be apportioned a lot to that whole slew of contributing partners. We have a lot of work to do there, figure all that out. But that's, any questions about this? This is kind of our starting point. No, okay. Okay, I think I already mentioned this. This is just funding to supplement conservation easements. I've already, and the goal, of course, is to have more resources for Volusia County, more acres protected, and a great. Oh, and I did want to. Oh, that's so. Okay, I think Brad or Tim mentioned that Volusia County is already. Tried this approach with blended funding with NRCS programs. And that's cool, and I guess it didn't work out or something. Okay. A big advantage of doing it this way, it's just a different way of doing it, is the land use types are different here. I mean, there's a greater breadth of the types of land you can apply this to. Because the other program, I believe, was ale, agriculture. The other program that they tried was a grasslands protection. So it had to be a grassland. Well, we kind of live in a heavily timbered area, right? So under RCPP, you can use the same approach, but you can use it for forest lands, timberlands, a much wider range of land types. So that's a really powerful, I mean, a really, compelling reason to do it this way. This is a much longer way to get there, but you have more options when you do get there. So, okay. Okay, and then I just, about my last slide, but just want to show sort of the opportunity areas. This is a map that went in with the proposal. There are quite a few, like Volusia Conservation Corridor is an existing priority conservation area. And there are other Florida Forever project areas in the area, longleaf pine ecosystems, and over in Lake County, the Wekiva-Ocala corridor. And the green bits are the opportunity areas of the Florida Wildlife Corridor. So this kind of brings in DEP because the Florida Wildlife Corridor is now the, codified by law as Florida's blueprint for conservation. So we're also, trying to implement that as well. Okay. All right, so like I keep mentioning, we're just getting started. The award was just announced. So this is a very rough timeline, I think, of what to expect next. We enter into a negotiation phase. ACT is the lead partner, so we are at the table negotiating, but we're going to do it shoulder to shoulder with Volusia County, right? Or, as much as they can stand. So, and so the NRCS has already told us, look, you have a deadline of next May to get all those foundational agreements in place. So that's what we'll be working on a lot through, the winter and spring. So foundational agreements, let's say, get installed next May, June. I think we can expect to get the land management program up and running by next fall, because we do also try to conform to NRCS cycles, and they have a big land management sign-up period in the fall. In fact, today is the deadline for one, and the government didn't shut down, so it's all looking good. So we can expect that. The conservation easement part's a little bit more fuzzy, but remember, we need to do it in concert with cycles of the established processes, like Volusia Forever. So we'll be negotiating with NRCS to say, this is how we want to do it, and this is when we want to do it, to sort of to conform with these cycles. Right? Okay. And that's, yeah.
Let me jump in and kind of supplement some of the things that Susan said, and I think that's it's important to reinforce that when we talk about the easements that'll be secured under RCPP, they're still going to move through the Volusia Forever program. So you'll still be handling those easements before we're closing on them through the RCPP program. We touched on match in the presentation today. Match is essentially to keep doing what we're doing now. We're going to continue to secure conservation property in Volusia County, and that'll count towards our match obligation under this grant. A couple other things, I don't know if they jumped out to you. On some of the slides, you may have seen some overlap with other RCPP programs. That does not affect the Lake to Lagoon at all. We can continue to do business, and it doesn't mean that those other programs then essentially get to dip into Volusia Forever's match dollars. I guess the last thing I would say is we've touched on the grant application here on both the easement side as well as the landowner assistance funding. When we talk about the easements, I just want to reiterate, in 2020, when the Volusia voters reaffirmed this program, we extended it to include what we call the forest and farmlands, which is our agricultural easement component. Both those forest and farmlands and standard conservation easements are going to be eligible under the RCPP. So as you handle easements that come through on both sides, there is potential down the road for partnership or funding through RCPP to bring these over the line. That was it.
That's a good point. I mean, this is the Farm Bill, so it is a working lands. I mean, I wouldn't say it. Yeah, I just wanted to. In addition to where I remember I said land use diversity is kind of a good benefit of this program. Also, the types of easement. right? So when you're locked in with agricultural land easements to one easement template for one type of land, here they actually have 6 templates. I mean, I know I'm getting kind of technical, but it does give you a greater array of the types of easements that you can do or, you know, marry with this program.
Well, and I think that's important to landowners. So we're talking about the upcoming negotiation phase. There's been a little bit of what I would call marketing via press releases already, just regarding the award, but we still have some work to do to get this information out to the community in Volusia County. I think one of the key things here is that when we talk to some of these agricultural landowners, because there's a spectrum of different easement types, it gives us the opportunity to talk about the desired outcome of the landowner here. So we can find an easement that fits their vision for their property long term. So I think that's a real plus under a federal program that, you know, to be honest, a lot of times the federal programs are very rigid and bureaucratic, but we do have some flexibility here on what we can offer these landowners here. And we'll get into more detail in the future. We do have an extensive outreach that we're conceptualizing right now to try to make sure that the community is aware of this opportunity. And we hope, you know, we're going to arm you all with enough information that you can then recommend that some folks that you may interact with apply to Volusia Forever. And we'll work with ACT and the RCPP program to see if we can fulfill their vision.
I have a question, if is this appropriate time? I have a question. With the marketing, is the county going to continue doing and submit to Alachua, or is Alachua going to market it to the public? Who's doing the marketing? It's not real clear to me.
Well, so it's not been fully defined on how we're going to market, but we're both going to be engaged in outreach. So Volusia Forever staff is going to be doing outreach through some of the local communities here. This will be, you know, through the Farm Bureau and the ag community, as well as trying to reach large landowners through other medium that, you know, we can certainly receive feedback from you on your recommendations on how you think we should conduct that outreach, but we will be trying to get this information out to landowners who may be interested in participating.
I do have a quick question. Just so I'm clear, the Lake to Lagoon area reached into Flagler and it reaches into Lake County. But Volusia Forever dollars, they're just going to be for Volusia County properties, correct?
Yes, yeah, Volusia Forever dollars, and this is one of the things that it's going to be our charge to protect as we work through the negotiation periods and handle these applications. These are just for Volusia County properties.
Thank you.
Fantastic program, really excited. I had 2 quick questions. One was on the site selection process. If you stick around, you'll see how we do it.
Okay.
Typically here, and I just wanted to see, is there the opportunity for the RCPP to nominate properties for us to review, or would we typically be bringing our nominated properties to them, to you? You want to take that?
That goes to my marketing question to a certain extent. That's what I was trying to ask, really.
So, I mean, it can work both ways. And so we've already had some conversations. ACT's already got some outreach from some people that are interested. And so the first step there is, if they're interested at this point in time, we're going to provide them with an application for the Volusia Forever program. And vice versa. You know, Dr. Carr mentioned that we'll be kind of shoulder to shoulder through the negotiation phase. We'll have a very close working relationship throughout the life of this program here. As the lead partner, we are going to be very engaged with ACT on the applications that are being processed through. So that means anytime they receive something, we're going to receive word of it. We'll try to get a copy in front of you all for evaluation.
But I'll add to that. So yeah, actually, if a property got to the end of, you know, making it through all this, yeah, it would go through the process that you have just right as it is. I mean, there'll also be some evaluation on the NRCS side. But through this partnership, it's minimal, and it mainly defers to the partners in the partnership program, right? And we've already, that was part of the proposals. Like, we have an existing program, Volusia Forever, right? We have an existing process. I even sent them, you know, all your resolutions with the process and how it works, and so there's something existing. So in this easement part of this program, we want to just supplement this existing process and program. So that said, there still is some, it is the federal government. They have to do some evaluation. They have to also do some NEPA analysis and that sort of thing. But we're going to figure all that out. Yes.
And then, quick second question that's really curiosity and not so much to program administration. For the land management activities that NRCS does, is there a specific size that they look at that they'll take on, or what is the scope of what they'll help?
It's no limit, right?
There's no limit to either too small or too large. NRCS has to take along to the wood.
And that one, so that's a good question. I'm glad you brought that up, because that one, that's just the NRCS to the landowner. We play by their rules entirely, but we facilitate it. Well, we have some discretion, but we play by their rules. It's their contract, their rules, and so, yes. That said, we will have practices, I don't want to get too detailed, but we'll have practices that are prioritized, right? And there's a lot of climate smart stuff coming down, because remember, it's coming through the IRA, which is climate bill and everything. So there are practices that will be priority for, climate reasons.
And actually, George, 1 second. Actually, come up to the mic, because what I was going to say is that previous comment that there is no limitation on size was made by George Johnson. That's really just a comment for the minutes. When we go back and put these minutes together, and George, please use the microphone.
Yeah, and so the NRCS doesn't discriminate by size in one way or the other. And the other thing with the land management that RCPP is using is we have a limited number of practices that we're going to be funding. So the regular EQIP that NRCS offers for, for intensive agricultural properties is the way to go for those kind of projects. And the ones that are going to be more specific to RCPP are the ones that we offer.
Anyone else?
So I have two more questions. You brought up NEPA, so is that going to be turned over to local then?
Oh, no, that's something the NRCS does.
Oh,
And do you know more about like how they do, I think it's more of a broad spectrum of NEPA. It's not like they do individual documents for each easement project or anything like that.
While George is walking up, NEPA is a National Environmental Policy Act.
Yes.
yeah, right.
Yeah, so they can't spend federal dollars if they're going to be breaking any of these environmental laws. So NRCS will evaluate wetlands, they'll evaluate cultural resources, they'll evaluate endangered species, all this kind of thing. They have a form called, it's an environmental evaluation form called the CPA 52, which we all hated. We all had to do for every project, but that's what will happen. So it's not going to be like it may or may not be an extensive environmental assessment. They have a streamlined process for farm bill programs that may be what they'll be using.
Okay, so that brings me to my second question. Are you only looking at individual projects, or are you looking at only connectivity, or are you looking at both?
For the land management practices?
For
Selection, like ranking, or?
For
no.
the easements?
Oh, for easements, that's.
Both.
Yeah,
We'll look at both.
yeah.
I mean, honestly, see, this is part of the development of the program. We have to develop the selection criteria.
Could you go to the mic, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. We still do need to develop the selection priorities, the evaluation criteria. I think in large part we'll defer to what's already exists here. So, but yeah. And then for the land management, yes, we've got to develop a selection criteria.
We'll have a ranking process that coincides with NRCS's ranking that they usually do for land management. So it'll be similar but specific to our goals and wishes.
And I'll just make one, that's a good question, because actually under a partnership program, the partners get input on how the ranking criteria are developed, right? So it's another kind of little powerful part of the program. Ordinarily, like if you're if you're trying to get a land management cost share contract from the government, you're in there with regular EQIP, the regular program. NRCS develops those selection criteria. Here, we get a say in that, so that's good.
Okay, Anyone else? No. I had just one question. Given that this is ultimately coming from the Farm Bill program, is this something that is going to be an annual opportunity for additional funding?
Yeah, that's a good question. This is a 5-year agreement. That said, there is a renewal process and program. I haven't gone through that yet. That would happen after you obligate the funds, or most of the funds. And by obligate, I mean not close all of the easements, but obligate them to the point that they are under some kind of contract with the producer, the landowner. So what I'm saying is, if we obligate most of the funding, we can go back for a renewal. We could.
Can you do that at any time, or only when it's up for, when the Farm Bill itself is up for renewal?
Oh, I see what you're saying. That is an NRCS sort of designated cycle. In fact, what I've heard is if you make good progress on your RCPP, they come to you and say, do you want to apply for a renewal? That is, the Farm Bill is usually a 5 to 6 year kind of omnibus bill, right? But I don't know if that's an annual thing. I think it's more just if you hit the mark kind of thing. I don't think it's on an annual cycle, but I'm not really sure. That said, I forgot one very good. The Inflation Reduction Act appropriated $5 billion just for this program over top what was already in the Farm Bill. So there's just a lot of money in this program right now. So you can see that and that money is supposed to be parsed out in the next 3 years. So the total funding pool for RCPP is really ramping up. So let's say 2 year, we just really cook with gas and everything and obligate everything in 2 or 3 years, we'd be in good shape, I think, even from an availability standpoint for renewal.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right? Or do y'all have, I mean, it's,
Any other questions?
anything can happen in Congress, right? But
Yeah. Questions from anyone? Okay, excellent, excellent. Thank you. A lot of information and a great opportunity. I'm excited about this one, a great opportunity for the county. Okay, that brings us to eligibility review. We have 6 properties, and just a reminder that we are here simply to determine yes or no whether the property is eligible. We are not looking to go into any type of ranking at this point. It's just eligible or not eligible. And I'm sorry, Ms. Gow, did you have a question or a comment?
Just had a question. Maybe we talked about it last time and I forget. Did we get rid of our little charts that we follow and fill in?
I think at the last meeting that we were using the charts as to how we were voting, we decided that if we were using the charts, we were going to put just approve or not approve, so that there wasn't the confusion that came up if a motion was made in the negative, because that was what was causing the issues. If someone said, I make a motion that this not be approved, the confusion was coming up. So I did not see the charts in our packets. We'll make sure that on the roll call that we're specific and that they can hear us, so that if anyone asks, which I understand has happened in the past, if anyone asks how people voted, then we've got it. Okay, very good.
Okay, so we've covered the task in front of you all. We are at the eligibility stage right now. This is simply a reflection of the resolution questions that you are considering as you evaluate these properties. And with that, I'm going to turn the first one over to Nick Dunham.
Thank you, Tim. Nick Dunham, Interim Resource Stewardship Director. We have had 6 properties that we're bringing before you today in the eligibility review. The first property that is up is the Double Eagle property. The Double Eagle property is a forest and farmlands easement application, approximately 990 acres in the southeast part of Volusia County. I received a staff score of 14. It is directly adjacent to the Farmington Green Key and Colbin Carmen Mitigation Bank. And it is also adjacent to the most recent Volusia Forever A-list property, the Lake Harney parcel. And with that, I'll turn it over to the committee for any questions.
Ms. Cow?
I just have one quick question. On the parcel lineup, and I asked this to tee it up for another later one, but I see we have 5 parcel IDs, so everything shown in the boundary is included. There's no exclusions from this.
There is one small exclusion, that is the circular piece on the south end of the property. That is
What
being
is that?
retained by the landowner.
Okay.
That is the residence that they are pulling out? Is that what that circle is?
Yes.
Okay. Other questions? Okay, so it's adjacent to one that's already in the program and one that's on the A list right now. Okay, very good. If there's no questions, yes, Derek.
So again, how are they getting to that circular residence property? I guess that's what is going to be built, or it is built? Yeah, I also was curious.
This application is a forest and farmland, so the landowner retains the ownership and management of the property.
Okay, just checking, but there's like a road kind of on the south side, I assume, of that circle or something like that? Is that?
Yes, there's plenty of access internally.
Okay.
Okay, if no other questions, we're ready for a motion?
I move to approve Double Eagle as eligible.
Okay,
Second.
very good. Okay, we have a motion to approve by Mr. Crump and a second by Mr. Gamble. Any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, very good. Property deemed eligible. All right, second property, UB property.
Next property is the UB property. This is a fee simple application. Staff has scored it as a 10. 308 acres in size, and it is adjacent to Deep Creek Preserve.
Tim, I'm going to jump in and add also that it's also adjacent to another A-list property. The Carter Ranch piece is directly on the other side of this parcel.
And that is also known as Quail Ranch, correct?
Yes, also known as Quail Ranch.
Okay,
This parcel here sits directly between the two.
okay, very good. Questions from anyone? Okay, oh, go ahead, Mr.
Just
Lomax.
curious if, have you gone out to the property for this one?
Yes, we did make a site visit.
So on that north side, that's kind of cleared, I guess for agriculture or other uses, would that be envisioned to maybe be replanted? Or is that kind of any possibility in the future?
Yes, absolutely. So the two approaches we look at on the land management side are restoration, or it could possibly be a continued cattle lease as well, if there's already cattle out there and we deem it appropriate for the site.
Okay, thank you.
2 quick questions.
Ms. Khan?
The round pond, if it was cattle, is that a cattle dipping vat or is it just a pond? It's very circular. Just wondering.
It's certainly a man-made pond,
Okay.
likely being used for cattle for now, but that's also something we would look at on the restoration side.
Perfect.
It's a cooling pond. It's not a
not a
vat.
dipping vat.
It's not
Okay.
concrete bottom. No.
Good. Environmental issues. So the other thing, and this doesn't relate to the site, just overall, I know that we should know, but when we have the initial review reports, is there a way to put on that chart somewhere the required number for each? So fee simple requires this many out of 15, easement this many out of 15, just so we have it.
Yes, on the project reports for the next phase,
Yeah.
yes, we can do that.
Thank you.
Along that line, what is the minimum requirement for a score for a fee simple purchase? Just remind me again.
The minimum requirement for a fee simple purchase is 10 of 21.
10 of 21, so.
Other questions? Okay, ready for a motion on the UB property?
I make the motion. I make the motion to approve.
To approve, okay. A second?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Macaluso for acceptance with a second by Mr. Sosa. All those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Property is approved, accepted. All right, next is TTT Ranch.
Yes, Triple T Ranch, a fee simple application of 533 acres, received a staff score of 12. It is not in any acquisition target area, but it is directly adjacent to the Wiregrass Prairie Preserve that we already own and manage.
A quick question along Ms. Gow's lines, all the little in-holding red boxes, is that included or excluded?
At this time, a lot of the internal boxes you see are excluded, so those would be considered out parcels.
Out parcels.
And are those under different ownership? Is that?
Yes, some are under different ownerships.
So this would be the reverse of a small lot acquisition.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there issues with access to all those individual to me, that looks very problematic. I mean, if those weren't there, I mean, I think this is a slam dunk. But I mean, if all those people have to have access to those parcels, that's crazy.
Yeah, that's certainly going to be a challenge on the management side later on, is managing around parcels, but it's not impossible. So we would work out any easement issues at the back end of the acquisition process. And Tim might have a few comments to add as well.
Sure, yeah, and so two things I want to point out. Number one is when you look at the application was actually represented by a legal entity, a law firm, who has stated that there were no boundary encroachments or easements of concern on the property. So at this point, we kind of take their word on it. But so the way this is normally handled is if we start the acquisition kind of early stages of examination, we get title reports on this property. So we'll find out then if there are any existing access easements or other issues there that we need to be concerned about. Obviously, that has the potential to affect value and has the potential to affect whether we proceed or not, depending on the nature of those easements.
Do we know are those all individual landowners or is it one landowner?
Individual. I poked around a little bit trying to figure out the same questions you're asking. It's a spectrum of owners, some in state, some out of state. Yeah, I think some folks have forgotten that they actually own these things.
Okay.
Did staff visit this property? Did you tour this property?
No, we have not visited this one.
Just one last question on in the review. It looks like it's an old paper plat, kind of like the things they used to sell on the riverboat going down the river to New York. And so people forget all the time about them. We've had a similar case in Daytona. But I think that, and Corey will probably be able to answer this, the applicant with storage. If they landlocked the property at any point, then there might be an obligation to provide an access easement, right? So I just want to look into that. If it's not recorded, it might be just a statutory operation. So.
Yes, yeah, a valid point, yes.
And looking at some of the maps, it looks like they are acquiring some of those parcels because some of the older maps had more outholdings than what the current maps do. So it looks like they are working on doing just what we're talking about. All right, any other questions on this one?
Are all these parcels in the red boxes are all unimproved, correct?
So not improved as in no structures
No
on them?
structures on them.
Yeah, no structures on them, but it certainly does appear that they've been cleared and are used for agriculture.
Okay, Mr. Lamontage.
Sure. I would just like to see, if, just for a second, just to share with everyone who's not maybe seeing what's in our packet. I always appreciate when there's pictures and stuff of not just the maps. So could we pull up a couple of those just for anyone who's maybe viewing on at home, just for the record, kind of. And also, I had some questions about what I'm looking at, some of the animals that they have. And they're on, that's page 88, 89, and 90, I guess. I was just curious. Yeah, is it possible that I'm not sure.
So those are supplemental material that were presented through the website. I'm not sure that we can, oh, okay, well,
Oh,
great.
cool.
Great job, Ashley.
No, thank you. Yeah, so again, it looks like there's cranes and wild turkeys, right? And a deer all at the same spot at the same time. That's like really cool. I don't know if they're being fed or something out there, but, and then, yeah, is that a feeding structure? I'm not sure what that is. Okay, very cool. And then I didn't know what this one was, but does anyone know what this is a picture?
Those are two black bears fighting.
Two bears.
Sir, if you'd like, you can come up to the microphone.
If you would, before you leave, just fill out so that they have name and address, please.
So my name is Lou Tall. I don't reside in Volusia County. That's just an excess property for our family to recreate. But that particular picture is two boar bears fighting at a feeding station. It was taken at night from one of the cameras there. The previous picture, yes, they're all from feed stations.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm not sure if in the future we will keep feed stations, I guess. I'm okay with that either way, but I just was curious if that's our policy. But yeah, I really appreciate the pictures, so thank you for sharing them.
You're welcome. And I'm also, it was fee simple, or conservation easement. We're okay with that as well. Those out parcels that are within there, there's no physical access, never has been. So those, I've never had anybody come and try to attain access. This was done back in the late 60s, and so it might be 3 generational now. So I have contacted all the landowners. I have bought 42 of them since I acquired it back in 2003. So there is no physical access. There is legal access, but no physical access to those out parcels.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, any other questions? All right, then, ready for a motion?
I move to make this property eligible.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gamble and a second by Ms. Scow for acceptance of this property. All in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, unanimous. That brings us to number 4, McMillian property.
Okay, next application is the McMillan property. This is for a conservation easement. Staff has scored it at an 8. Eligible is 7 of 21. The acreage is 212 acres, and this is adjacent to a number of conservation easements, including the SJC Tropical Holdings Conservation Easement that was acquired through the previous Volusia Forever program.
Okay, questions for staff on this one? Mr. Sosa?
Yeah, did you say you scored it at an 8?
Yes.
You scored it at an 8? Because if I'm looking at the right one, I've got a 14 on my paper.
Scored at 14.
Oh, is it?
Page 138.
Okay, well, I apologize. My mistake, 14, I'm sorry.
It is a 14,
Yep.
okay.
Ms. Scow?
A quick question. I see their first rank, is how I'm reading it, is the conservation easement and then fee simple. With the conservation easement, have they given any indication of carve-outs for the existing homes that they would like to leave there?
Yes, yeah, we are going to have conversations if you determine this is eligible and placed on the A list. There will be conversations about a home site along the lake.
Got it.
And the thin strip of property that looks like it's running between the parcels from the State Road 415 to the lake?
Yeah, so it's Board of Trustees of the Internal Improvement Trust Fund, which is the state of Florida, which means when you click on the lake, this is considered part of the lake. So that's that thin strip that runs kind of from west to east through the center of this property here.
Okay, so no issues with that.
We don't anticipate any issues, and the landowner hasn't represented any issues with the state on that ownership.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a drainage easement for 415?
It doesn't show up, so My knowledge is a little bit limited on exactly how it functions. Really, we've just kind of taken a look around the property appraiser's map and tried to figure out where it came from. And it's the same parcel that the property appraiser used to define the lake itself. I don't know yet if it's a drainage easement or not.
I have a question. Did staff tour this? Did you go see this?
So I've met the property owner on the property and toured the property, yes.
Okay. Okay, and then the other question, Jessica brought this up earlier. Can you remind me again what the total number is for qualifying for a conservation easement?
So standard conservation easement is going to be 7 of 21, and so this is a scored of 14. Now, if you're going to do a fee simple, that's 10 of 21.
Right, but it says conservation easement.
Which is 7.
Okay, gotcha. Then the previous, so I don't want to go back again, but the previous one said acquisition, and when he came up to the microphone, he said acquisition or easement. And I guess one vote covered both then. I'm just asking.
So the way we handle it is we do ask the owner or the representative to select one as it processes through and is presented to you. And so the conversation on the previous one was fee simple. Now, if the owner is open to a conservation easement, that's something that it's not going to be a problem with us at all. We can simply kind of bring that back in front of the committee and look for your affirmation on that course of action.
Okay. So the reason I brought this up is the discussion that I had with you and Brad earlier this year concerning what happened in the past, where we voted on acquisition, but then later it came back as an easement. And for transparency purposes, I would just like to clarify what we're voting on.
So the project referenced is the Volusia Groves and Cattle Project in the city of DeLand. That was a partnership with the city of DeLand where we turned over fee simple ownership to the city, but we retained a conservation easement to protect the ecological attributes of the property for the Volusia Forever program.
Just on that note, then I think, I just wanted to say, well, I think it was still fee simple acquisition. Our partners can still take it. But in my mind, and maybe this is something the board, when we do our master planning or whatever it is we talk about, if you qualify for the higher one, I think you qualify for the lower one. And it's into negotiation and with, the trust of staff and council being the ultimate decider on what you go for. So in my mind, if you qualify for fee simple, if it ends up being an easement, you've already checked the boxes.
So I agree with you, but in effort for full transparency, we're certainly going to come back and make these determinations by the landowner known to the committee.
Yeah.
That
Very
would
good.
be the logical standing, but in the case of the DeLand, there was a lot of controversy. And I'm just pointing that out. I'm trying to avoid that.
Okay, other questions or comments on this property? Very good. Then we are ready for a motion.
I move to declare McMillan property as eligible.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Crump and a second by Mr. Gamble that we find the McMillan property eligible. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous acceptance. That brings us to number 5, the Morgenstern property.
Yes, Morgenstern property. It is a fee simple application located up in the Lake George Wildlife Management Area up near Seville. Received a staff score of 11, approximately 21 acres. It is not adjacent to any target area, but it's already completely surrounded by the Lake George Forest Management Area that is owned and managed by the county and the St. Johns Water River Management District.
So this would be managed in conjunction with what you are already managing?
Yes, we would consider this more as an end holding and it would be absorbed into the Lake George Management Area.
Okay. Questions?
The remainder parcel, that would be created by this. I think with his home, is it already a separate parcel of record, or would we be splitting off the portion that they're providing to us?
I believe this would be split off, correct, Tim? Yes.
That's what I figured. And so I just wanted to ask that with our eligibility, if we say yes, do you guys still have the discretion, if county planning comes back and says, we don't like that shape, make it a square, can you do that on the administrative side to change the boundary?
So it's a great question that has, I'm going to say, we haven't really encountered this before, but I'm going to say that I'm going to defer to bringing it back to the committee because reconfiguring the parcel has the potential to affect your scoring on these properties. And so I would want to make sure that we're still in line with your determination of eligibility before we proceeded.
Yeah, and the description that the property owner gave is that the property is 22 acres of 30 acres. So it would be interesting to see if they've already split that off, because he's advertising it for sale as 22 acres of 30 acres. So, okay.
Did staff tour this property?
Staff has been managing around this property for over 20 years, and we have also worked with this landowner in particular on some technical landowner assistance with prescribed fire and longleaf pine restoration. So he has a very ecologically planned out management plan that he's working on, and he has done some longleaf pine restoration on this already.
Okay, and is there any chance that this property would be an easement?
It's a fee simple application as is.
Right, but, I mean, we just had this, is there any chance that would happen? Or we don't know?
If we purchase this property as fee simple, it would be absorbed into the Lake George management area, so that we would not place an easement on a fee simple purchase we already manage.
Okay.
Ms. Scott?
It doesn't really matter, but are the trails shown, are they recreational or are they access? Looks like dirt bike.
Those are just his internal trails that he uses for access with a UTV to get around the property.
Other questions on the Morgenstern property? Okay, then we're ready for a motion.
One sec. Did you just say, what did you say, UTVs?
Yeah, like a small ATV to get around the property. They're not large enough for a full-size vehicle to drive around in internal.
Right, so only on his own property, because that one trail runs over to the other property.
That is a service road on the Lake George management area. So the boundary of this property is a fire line for the Lake George management area that we currently use. We keep fire lines on most of our boundaries to burn against.
So you can see the fire line just below the red.
Yes, looking at the map on the southern boundary line.
Right.
That is a service fire line.
Okay, okay. Other questions? Okay, we're ready for a motion on the Morgenstern property.
Move to make it eligible.
Second?
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gamble and a second by Ms. Gow to find the Morgenstern property eligible. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Motion carries unanimously for acceptance. Brings us to the last one, the New Touch properties.
New Touch is a fee simple application. Staff has scored it out of 10. It's roughly 24 acres in size. And it's adjacent to Lake George State Forest, and that is Lake George that you see there, that water body.
Questions for staff on the New Touch properties?
Is there access to this property? Let me look at the ranking. Other than from the lake? No.
There doesn't appear to be any internal road frontage from the aerial photographs, but you may be able to get to it from the south, looking at that. The public access for this piece would be from the Lake George State Forest, which directly borders this on the eastern boundary.
So as Jessica mentioned earlier, there may not be physical access, but there's always legal access by right.
So staff didn't, I take it you did not tour this then?
We have not had a site visit on this piece.
They want a boat, Suzanne. Don't give them reasons to get one. Just kidding.
I've got it on
You have to
record.
tell
I've
me
got it
these
on
things
record
ahead
now.
of time, Brad.
You had her helicopter, right?
Okay, so this entire border on here is, the eastern border is along the Lake George State Forest. So it would be not a continuation since that's state property, but who manages the state forest versus who would manage this piece?
The Florida Forest Service manages the state forest. I can't speak for the organization, but we have had internal talks, and they have expressed interest in taking this piece. But again, I can't speak for the organization at this point.
Okay, understand. Other questions? Okay, Mr. Lamontage.
Yeah, it's not an important question too much, but is New Touch a business? I didn't know if they had some intent for that to be, it's this interesting name, so I was curious if that's just a name they chose to, because it's not like an individual, it's,
It's shown as an LLC on the property appraiser's page. That's the extent of our research into that, though.
okay, thanks.
Other questions?
I don't have a question, just a comment about this. It doesn't reach staff didn't rank it to meet the threshold, and I really don't see any reason to raise it above the threshold.
Scored a 10.
It meets the threshold.
For fee simple, though?
Fee simple's
Fee
9.
simple's 10.
9.
Oh, 10 for fee simple.
Fee simple is 10. is the threshold.
Simple's 10, yeah. Okay, would anyone like to make a motion on the New Touch properties?
I move to make it eligible.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Gamble and a second by Ms. Gow to find the New Touch properties eligible. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Any opposed?
Nay.
Wanda Van Dam, Jessica Gao,
Yes.
Steve Crump,
No.
John Gamble,
Yes.
Derek LaMontagne,
Yes.
John Macaluso, Suzanne Schreiber,
Yes.
David Sosa.
New Touch Properties has been approved, and that brings us to the end of our 6 properties. And on to the 2024 proposed committee meeting dates.
So we're going to slide to this next slide, and I'm going to do it with a bit of caution, because after I created this PowerPoint, there was some discussion amongst staff about some conflicts to adjacent meetings, so there was a little bit more of an open discussion, so I may have some older dates that I'm showing on the screen here. Oh, Ashlyn's signaling these are accurate? Okay, so these are accurate dates. Thank you, Ashlyn. So that means she updated the PowerPoint. I appreciate that. Okay, so we now need to consider our 2024 meeting dates. We put a number of dates on the screen here for you. I know you may not have brought your calendars. We certainly love to get these on the calendar today and hope we can accomplish that, but if not, we can continue this dialogue.
Okay, to start with, does anyone know whether the January 12 meeting is going to be an issue for them? Because we would have more time on the rest of them, but the January 12 meeting, does anyone know if that's going to be a problem for them?
That is is already on my calendar, so I don't know if we.
That's
yeah,
what we
okay.
had, yeah. Okay. Anyone know of any of the others, understanding that we're going to need to check our own personal calendars and then get back with staff? But anyone know right now that one of the others will not work?
Yeah, Friday, June. I can do it the week.
So potentially the 7th?
I can't do the 7th, but I could do the week after if you can. Out, okay.
Okay, so on the 14th of June, we have Mr. Gamble who cannot attend, but the following week, the week before, Ms. Gow cannot attend. And the following week, Mr. Gamble will still not be here. So is that a date we can look to try to find a compromise on?
Yep. So
We have to be on.
I will make an offer. Well, actually, I don't want to interrupt that conversation. I apologize.
I mean, if we do Fridays for Derek, so it's, I don't know what his.
If there's an exception, we can do like a Monday or whatever. I mean, we can, but yeah, generally, those are best.
And I will also offer, our staff has been taking a look at the room calendar here, and May 31st is also an available date.
Okay, so does staff want to send out a couple possibles on that one and have us get back to you? Or is everyone comfortable with picking one of those dates now?
Let's pick one.
Pick it now?
So it would be May 31st?
May 31st, good for everyone? Okay, very good. Okay, so we're good with our dates into next year as far as we know now.
That's not a holiday, is it? Or it's
May 27th.
27th is the holiday, okay.
That's quite a long time from May 31st to September 20th.
I was thinking the same thing. We've called an extra meeting this year if we felt we needed it, so we'll reserve that right to do it if we have a lot of properties that need to be determined eligible or not, or ranked.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to do it, that we can, come up with a date that we can get together for an extra meeting. I think that's a great idea. Okay, everyone good on the rest of them, as far as we know right now, understanding? Okay, very good. That brings us to advisory committee comments. So, anyone that has any questions or comments? Mr. Sosa?
I just would like to thank Nick. He took me on a tour of the Lake George Preserve. It was beautiful out there. Really nice piece of property. And I just had a quick question. If somebody wants to put their property, is there any eligibility dates that they have to put it in by, other than they can file it at any time?
So you're absolutely correct. You can file it at any time. And as we discussed at the last meeting, we're trying to use 30 days ahead of the meeting as a cutoff date.
All right, thank you.
I have a question. We received that list in September of people who had, what do you call it, nominated properties, and it said no one had contacted back in the email, and Nancy came in today, Nancy Wary.
So
And
Nancy
she was on
Weary,
there 4 times, because I wrote it down, that she was on there 4 times.
right, Ms. Weary is the nominator. So when we receive nominations, and so we call them nominations. Let me start from that position. If you go back and take a look at the resolution, you're supposed to have a willing seller letter as part of your nomination. But as staff, what we do is we then send a letter out to the landowner asking them if they are interested in participating in the program. Essentially, would they be a willing seller? If we don't receive a response, it doesn't move forward at all. It stops at that point in time.
Okay, so with what she did in the past, I had asked this today pertaining to what the presentation was. Are you scoring based on individual properties or on projects?
We're scoring individual properties. That's all that's been presented at this time. There is the potential, there is a paragraph in the resolution that mentions projects, and we've had some discussions with some nominators about that outcome, but no projects have gone before the committee.
I just have one comment. Dr. Carr, Mr. Johnson, thank you so much for the presentation. I've been around congressional bill funding all my career until I retired, thank God, and mainly on the Clean Air Act, and I bless you.
Derek Lemon, Mr. Lemon.
Thank you. Just a few follow-up comments. I also want to thank our friends for showing up and, well, everyone else for all their hard work. I guess, I don't know if it's a general question for them, if they will be doing other work in the county other than the corridor work that they discussed today. Is that an envisioned future for Alachua Conservation Trust? Because, of course, we don't have a Volusia Conservation Trust, which is different than Volusia Forever.
I won't say no. Probably. I think it's, yes, you're right. There is no, well, other than Conservation Florida, that I think has done some work in the area and is statewide. I don't know of another regional land trust in Volusia County. I don't think. There's Indian River Land Trust south of here, but so yes, this will be part of our working area. I think we're going to be highly focused on the RCPP at first. But, so, the thing is, once the door opens, so there'll be landowner interest and they may come make applications or nominations to Volusia Forever. But then some people may want to donate land or donate conservation easements. We are equipped to receive donated, easements as well. So it may be that we work kind of on those sorts of things. I don't know if you guys receive a lot of donations, but sometimes people prefer to donate to a land trust for various reasons. So I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yeah, thank you. We can talk later. Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
A few other comments, just quickly. So I just to follow up, I guess, on a couple things that were said. So I guess 30 days, you're still accepting nominations for the January time then? Is that?
Yes, I believe that would be December 13th is when we try to cut that off.
Okay, yeah, just because, again, I guess I didn't explicitly see that date. I think some of the wording was changed, which is till mid-November, I think it's currently said that, which, isn't necessarily the 15th or 10th. Or
so let me jump in and say we've tried to correct the language on the website and on the application and anywhere else that we found those old references. So if you are still finding them, let us know where they are. And we'll make that change.
Yeah, I think some of the applications that people use today in our packet, from these people, they might have been using one they pulled off from a few years ago, I guess. But yeah, it's updated now. That's great. I guess another just quick question that's always on my mind. It came up of the willing seller note. I appreciate that that's needed, but I'm curious if the definition of willing seller is strictly that they sign that letter, because willing seller to me is they have a sign on their property that says like, hey, we're selling this property. Like that to me tells me they're looking to sell to somebody. And I don't know, I thought that's kind of my feeling of sufficiency in a sense, but of course it seems, we got to sign some things to make that official, I guess.
The language used in the resolution is a signed willing seller statement.
Okay, got it. So And a few, this is a request, I guess, of our, the preference, I suppose, for how we review these things. I've noticed this, and maybe we did cover this at some point, but I see the order of the properties that we look at for eligibility or not seems to be from largest to smallest. And personally, I think that, is not necessary to be that way. I'd actually prefer it to go the other way, or just to be alphabetical. It seems like that might, again, we go through them quick enough, it doesn't matter too much. But I mean, just out of fairness, sometimes we get exhausted near the end of a meeting. If it's like the small property, I think, there's been shown to be biased depending on where you are on an agenda. I'd like it to be either alphabetical or at least mixed up some other way, or, farthest north property, the farthest south property. I mean, we could do it various ways, but just to always do biggest to smallest, whether it be eligibility or A to B ranking, I'd like to see that mixed up or changed, and maybe next time we can do smallest to largest, see if it's any easier or not. I don't know if there's a reason we're doing it that way.
Hopefully, we can maintain our focus long enough to get through the agenda, no matter how these properties are listed. And I can understand doing them, largest to smallest. I don't have a problem with it. If you want to make a motion, go ahead, and if it carries, we can make a change. If it doesn't, then how the rest of the committee feels.
Okay. I mean, I guess just out of most fairness would probably be alphabetical. So I'll say I'd like to make a motion, just the properties to be reviewed based on whatever their letter is for their consideration of alphabeticalness. For eligibility purposes or for A to B ranking.
Okay, you have a motion to list the properties alphabetically in regards to eligibility and ranking. Is there a second on that? Okay, motion fails for a lack of second. Okay, anything else, Mr. Lamontage?
Oh, yeah, thank you. Just one last thing. So, yeah, I hope in the future, we're for sure continuing to look at all the properties, and in fairness, and we will. That shouldn't be a problem. You're right. It's just something I was thinking about. But in terms of what does get before us, I guess I am still a little confused if there will be carryover from ones that were like put on hold or kind of nominated, and I guess, is there a way to kind of know what to expect for the next meeting other than like a week ahead of time of like what, I guess there's not going to be we get the meeting agenda like a week ahead of time, but is there kind of any other way anyone can check what's kind of going to be considered?
Give us a call, email, meeting. We'll be happy to sit down and talk through what the inventory is. No problem at all.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that. And any sort of a announcement too. I guess I would like, I know you're doing a lot of work with this, but to make any other additional announcements you can, to just say, yes, we are currently accepting, properties. I know that, we can make that every meeting. I could ask you to do that, but I think there's still some confusion if people do that. I will tell the people I know, of course, and since you're still taking it till December 13th, but any other announcement or even an email to us, and just, this is, maybe you already you have a format or, a quick copy paste thing we can send out to people that we'd be happy to share.
And the Volusia Forever dashboard, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at that. They've done an excellent job on that, and that tells people pretty much anything and everything they need to know if they want to put their properties forward. So just encourage people to look at the Volusia Forever dashboard, and they should have all their answers there as well.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, just a thank you for the presentation. Excellent. That's a program that I'm very excited about. Farmland is something that is near and dear to me, so I'm very excited about that. So thank you for that. And also wanted to mention, I forgot to take the magazine, but in the fall issue of the National Wildlife magazine, the Florida Wildlife Corridor was written up very nicely. So another national magazine that the Wildlife Corridor is in. So, okay, any members of the public that would like to make any comments, have any questions? Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Okay, Mr. Gamble made the motion to adjourn, and Ms. Schreiber seconded it. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.